President Donald Trump just signed the Omnibus budget deal. It was supposed to be budget, but it's not really budget anymore. They call it the Omnibus because it contains all these different fragments, these different laws that are shoved in there at the last minute. It was very much at the last minute. I mean, this bill became available to different congressmen like just over a day before it was supposed to be signed to prevent a government shutdown. This isn't a small bill. This is over 2,000 pages. They have a day to read. Like somebody didn't want them to know what was in it. Some good people have spoken out against it. Senator Rand Paul spoke against it. The so-called Freedom Caucus. Senator Ted Cruz. Good people. And President Trump kind of gave us some hope in the hours before he signed it. He said that he was going to veto it, or that he might veto it. Like he was listening to people. And then he didn't. He signed it. He signed it while stating that he hadn't read it. That people didn't know what was in it. And I'm exasperated. I know a lot of people are too, and disgusted. I thought that after Obamacare was like the last big bill we were going to sign in without knowing what was in it. That was what the Democrats did. And throwing out financial responsibility was what they did too. So I can really understand this frustration. I want to talk briefly about some of the things that are actually in it. And we're still kind of finding that out. But one thing that's in it is a piece of legislation that had stalled in the Senate. It's called Fix NICS. And NICS is the federal database that felons and seriously mentally ill people get reported to so they can't get a gun. So when you go to buy a gun and you fill out the background check, it comes back and says, no, you can't purchase. There were some problems with that. Some states weren't reporting in. And in fact, some federal agencies weren't reporting in. The Navy didn't report in. That's why the Texas church shooter didn't get flagged when he should have, when he was dishonorably discharged. Okay. Now, the Republican leadership has long since said, we're not going to sign that until people who have concealed carry permits in each state can travel to another. I mean, why not? I mean, if I have a concealed carry permit here in North Carolina, why can't I travel to Florida with it and still be able to conceal carry? It seems kind of basic and obvious. So they were holding out, and both bills were supposed to, get passed at the same time. Like, the Democrats wanted one side and the Republicans wanted the other, and that's the way that it's been working. But now, the Democrats got what they wanted. They got the Fix NICS, but yet, no concealed carry, in between states. Reciprocal, no. There's more. I know that Donald Trump and several people who support this, I hate to call it the budget deal because it's so much more, but anyway, those who support it keep talking about the military. It's all the military, but it's not all the military. If it were just funding the military, I wouldn't feel so bad about it. But we're funding these programs that are just out of control, like $6 billion for the National Science Foundation. Really? We're already a nation that's in debt. But a lot of it isn't even for the stuff in our country. I mean, yes, we have lots of wasteful programs in our country, like the National Science Foundation, but in other countries? I mean, in this bill, $51 million to international family planning. Abortions in other countries. I don't even know what to say. Regardless of what you think of abortion, surely we can agree on the very basic thing that the government shouldn't be funding it, in this country or abroad. Right? And also Planned Parenthood funding is in this, of course. That's what the Democrats want, and it seems to be pretty much written by Democrats. I don't know if anybody's noticed. And Planned Parenthood is so partisan, right? It's like they're constantly funding these Democrat politicians. So we give them taxpayer money, and then they fund Democrats. Imagine if this was a fairly partisan organization like the NRA, right? Imagine if, millions of dollars were in this bill to give money to the NRA, and then the NRA came around and funded Republican politicians. Imagine the outrage. That taxpayer money was supporting the NRA, which was then, funneling it in different directions. But Planned Parenthood does exactly that. They're extremely partisan. $218 million for promoting democracy in Europe, and what is often referred to as the birthplace of democracy. And by the way, how are we promoting democracy over there? Because as far as I can see, it becomes more and more tyrannical. What we're actually doing, if anything, is just funding these governments that are becoming more tyrannical, like helping them to exist and to oppress their people. When we should kind of let the countries implode, let their bad decisions, kind of come home to roost. Not let our tax money go over there. I mean, why should American children have to bear the debt for us funding some, increasingly dictatorship government over in Europe? But this isn't even complicated stuff. We're giving $10 million for female law enforcement officers in Afghanistan. What? I mean, it's not even just law enforcement officers, right? I mean, if we wanted to, say, pull out of Afghanistan, and sounds like a pretty good goal, but if we wanted to do that without leaving an ISIS-shaped power vacuum, then I can understand why you'd want to have a present police force. Okay, fine. But women. Why women? Why not just law enforcement? Are women, let's say, better police officers? No. Are they more respected on the streets of Afghanistan? No. Are they more efficient? No. We're just trying to impose our social justice programs here onto Afghanistan, onto one of the least receptive places in the world. I mean, we're actually placing women in Afghanistan at increased risk because they're out there playing cop. I mean, really. They're much more likely to get killed. But it makes Democrats over here feel good. So that's why we're giving $10 million for that. And then there's another $12 million for scholarships for the Lebanese. I mean, millennials ought to be just kind of outraged. They're always talking about how much college debt we have, or they have. But we're funding scholarships for the Lebanese, and I think the Taiwanese too. There's a Middle East Partnership Initiative Scholarship Program. Well, American college students, for a fact, a different variety of reasons, can't afford college. I mean, I don't even know what to say. We're giving money to China at a time when we're imposing tariffs on China. We're giving $15 million in developmental assistance to China. At a time when they're threatening to put tariffs on us on US pork, we're giving $15 million in developmental assistance. And what are we helping them to develop? I mean, technologically, they're pretty developed. They have a very developed military. If you look at the Chinese cities, they look pretty developed to me. The only area in which China isn't developed is in the area of, say, democracy. Of, say, the ability of churches to be able to practice in peace. That's where they're not developed, and I'm pretty sure that's not where our money's going. And then, and perhaps the most galling piece of all, is that in this bill it was stated, according to Rand Paul, that defense can spend funds, as it decides, to enhance the border security of Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, and Tunisia. Does anybody notice a country that's missing from that? We are actually putting up borders, increasing border security around other people's countries. I mean, really. Okay, now, I have heard it speculated, and Donald Trump could do this, and I hope he does this, is that with the amount of money that he put into the military, he could have the Army Corps of Engineers build the wall. Our wall, the wall. The one that everyone's been talking about. And nobody could stop him. the money has been allocated to the military, he could have them build the wall. Finally, we could actually have a secure border. There's really no reason not to. And this could be part of his game plan. I hope, like I said, I hope that it is. He asked for a line item veto so that he didn't have to sign a budget agreement like this again. And I want to be clear, he didn't have to sign, and I really don't think he should have. But regardless, a veto where he could just kind of slice out different parts that he wasn't willing to fund, wasn't willing to get behind. And, well, it sounds good in the area of a budget agreement at least. But, I mean, Reagan asked for it, Bill Clinton asked for it, and Bill Clinton got it, and then it was struck down as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, so it probably won't actually happen. But let's say that it actually could happen, Supreme Court aside, for a minute. If it were just an actual budget bill that he'd be doing that on, or any president, I wouldn't have such a problem with it. But the fact is that increasingly our budget bills aren't budget bills. Our budget bills increasingly look like this one. Like things like fix NICS are in it. Why? There was even talk about how DACA should have been in it. You know, the immigration fix for those who came here as children. I mean, Trump won't be president forever. Even if he was the perfect president, he wouldn't be there forever. And you have to kind of think about how much power you want to give to the presidency there, to just kind of pick and choose from different bills. Because budget bills aren't budget bills, not anymore. Now, there are two ways that all of us can deal with this. To deal with what kind of feels like almost like a betrayal by Trump. One way is that I've seen some people saying, I'm done with Trump. I'm done with the Make America Great Again campaign. Now, if you do that, come the midterms, the Democrats will win, because you know they're coming out in force. If the Republicans and conservatives decide to sit at home, and not vote, because they're fed up with Trump for now, the Democrats will win. And at this point, they're not even just a little left. They're far left. They're like out there left, like communist left. You know, you have to think about how close we came to a Hillary Clinton presidency to really think about just, you know, how crazy things are. Now, it's a bad decision to stay at home. The alternative is to actually vote. See, this bill should never even gotten to Trump's desk. I mean, a bill like this, with conservatives supposedly in the House and in the Senate, it shouldn't have even been there. So, to actually fix this problem, instead of just giving up and saying, I'm done, is to vote out people like Paul Ryan, the current Speaker of the House. He himself, you can replace him with Nick Pulse. He's a guy, in Wisconsin who supports the Second Amendment and recognizes that the purpose of welfare is to help people for a little while and to get them off of welfare as soon as possible. Believes in nitpicky things like the Constitution. The point is that we need to start replacing these neocons, or these people who actually just vote like Democrats, who think that over $1 trillion in a budget agreement that only funds our government until September. I mean, really, only until September. That thinks that that's okay, that that's rational? I mean, I thought that used to be one of the definitions of a Democrat, was that kind of fiscal irresponsibility. All right, well, everybody kind of has a decision to make. I know that this is a big deal. I felt just kind of betrayed and disgusted by the whole thing. But the bottom line is there are only those two choices that you can make. I mean, really, there are no other options. There's give up and let the Democrats, and essentially their communistic views, replace our constitutional republic, or you can get rid of the people who made this even possible, these so-called Republicans. That's it. And give Trump, well, people in Congress who are willing to stand up for what's right. you like this video, please like it and subscribe. I'll be doing these often, and if you could share it with your friends, that would be great. Thank you.
Health-wise.